So I tried a little bit more with that bunker even. I added another one, didn't like it, and in the end I just realised it wasn't necessary and it was all a little bit of clutter. So what we've done is we've popped in another tree line, and I really like the way that's going to frame it. It's going to make it go from really wide open here to a little more claustrophobic here, and then just framing that sort of not quite hidden but tucked away green, which I like. Planting up here still to be finalised, but got a rough idea of how I want it to look. As ever with the tree line, we've also been looking at it from this angle for 16, so I think it works quite nicely there as well, and from 15 green. Now, I had originally wanted you to maybe be able to see down 12 from 16T, but I don't think that was going to work really so well anyway. You're always going to be looking this way. And you can see all the way over from the 15th green, so you're going to be able to see roughly where you are and get a few bits from there. But yeah, generally pretty happy with that change, and as ever, I think with the contest course more than anything else, if you're having doubts about something, whether it's that one bunker shape not quite being right, and you play around with it and it's just not quite coming naturally, do something else, rip it up and start again. Okay, so since we last looked, 12 has now been pretty much finalised, and really happy with how it's turned out. So I ended up just going with the one bunker up here, completely losing the one here, and we've now planted that whole kind of tree line. And what I've been doing a lot with this course is then going, once I'm all in on one side of this, it's going to be making it look good on the other side as well. So I've done 16 tee shot as well, which I think looks really special now as well. Now in terms of this has taken a couple of hours of work. So partly it was getting the scrub area around here looking about right. I think I could flesh it out a little more. So, and we're not quite done with the grasses up and around here. But also it was getting that green surround, because there's a lot of empty space up here that we've had to fill. So loads of trees, including some really funky ones where we've got some balanced on top of another here. All of which is just, you constantly go back and zoom down to here and kind of wonder whether the tree line looks about where you want it to. Now I may still be tweaking some of the heights of them, thinking, well, if you're playing your approach from here, does it look right? Does it look right from here? Certainly I'm really happy with the foreground. I think the bunker looks really pretty. And when you get up to here, I think that area generally looks great. There's a little bit of depth of planting and just really zooming around from all angles, and if you can go into the camera view, that does help. Obviously spinning around so the lighting's in your favour works nicely as well, but generally just checking that things are working well between holes as well. So yeah, that's really this update. Just thinking about how your planting looks from both sides, how much density you can get in one tree line. But all of this has been really, really carefully planted, so that's each tree going down and checking and double checking, and this one done, and I think I finished up 16 as well, and 15 I'm coming close to planting, because now that we started doing 16 tee shot and bringing the planting in there, we've again started to look at it from the other side, and I think 15 green is looking good now. Still unsold on that front bunker, it's a little deep, but actually putting shadows in front of it as well. So this tree here was a late addition. That's actually helped and stopped it looking quite so stark. If you've got bunkers that are looking, how to explain? If your high side is this side and the sun's coming from this direction, you're not actually getting the shadowing that you want. The bunkers look at their best when you can get shadows coming the right direction. So coming from high side down to low side looks a bit better, and if we go to a hole looking pretty much direct into the sun, which would be 6, they really start to pop a little bit more. Less so here. Whereas with 15, because they're facing dead at the sun, actually I find it can work quite nicely if you can get some shadows over the bunkers. It just, there's a little bit of a dappling effect. It softens that sharp whiteness and works quite nicely, whereas otherwise there can be a bit of a glare. So that's pretty deliberate, and I might try to do the same on one of these ones, but that would result in changing this tree line, and I'm not sure I want to. So here as well, you're looking at bringing that native environment even further in, and then those bunkers kind of become more of the natural environment, which is what I'm really trying to do with this. So yeah, short little update, but again, inching ever closer and seeing some of the planting join in between. Looking at the 13th, I think this is another good example of where you might adapt, and how the longer you go through a course, you might just change those initial ideas that you had. So originally 13 had a centerline bunker around about here. It was quite small, and then you had a camber on this side, and it was quite a straight hole. Now it's not many tweaks, but I felt that there were a few things here that just didn't quite fit with the rest of the course. Firstly, it was just dead straight, which I liked the idea of. I originally toyed with the idea of running out of bounds up this line, and I wanted you to hit to the right side to open up the green. I also had a green that went like this, with the one bunker there. Now, for a couple of reasons, I've changed bits of this hole. It still plays philosophically the same. It's a long par 4, so we're looking at 517, although with the way that this ball is going to roll out on very firm, very fast fairways, it's not going to play that distance. But I did need you to hit a longer iron in because of balance compared to the other holes. 10 is going to be a short 4, short 3, par 5. You need something with a little bit of bite, especially when 15 becomes a short, borderline drive ball hole in the right conditions. So we needed a longer 4 here, and I needed to accomplish that with it being fair. So landing zone's really wide, but your ideal line is going to be to carry these bunkers. Originally I didn't have any bunkers on this side, and it just didn't quite look right. You had this tiny little bunker in the middle of the fairway, which was at odds with all the big sweeping type bunkers we've got. So I wanted to change that up a little bit. Consequently, we've gone for a little bunker string down the right hand side, so it's not so much a carry hazard as a play as close to you can hazard, and you're rewarded for having distance off the tee in that you can get further towards the right, and the further right you go, the more you're actually opening up that green, because I'm going to raise this bunker so that pins behind it, you can see it's sort of already happening, are flowing away from it. So you're really going to want to run it through this channel as much as you can. But then for a pin back here, well, you might actually be wanting to play out to the right as well, the left as well even. The camber is still present. You've got about 5 feet or so of that. And then the other thing I found was there was just a lot of empty space that didn't really make much sense here. So what I have done has been to play with the land a little bit more. So now this is kind of a low area that I'm going to plant with scrub. It's not massively low, 6 feet down, but that little bit of elevation change and then back up to the green, I think will make the hole just stand out in a way that it didn't before. It all looked too flat. I had this bunker complex, you might remember, in here, and part of the reason I've lost that is I felt I'd done the same on 12. So I'd done that here, and I didn't want to repeat the same trick twice. But I do, and therefore I think even though that actually you've kind of got the same thing, you've got something breaking up this area about 60, 70 yards short of the green. We're going to do that by low planting rather than high raised bunkers, and I think although it's the same sort of idea, it will look visually different enough. I also wanted to lose this idea of a green with a bunker banked into the side of it and then it just runs off. So here we're going to have bunkers at the back, and I'm going to build in a tree line all the way around here, so it's like you're playing into this little glade or cluster of trees, which will look different to other green complexes that we've got. Kind of a little bit like this one on 16, but it's going to be more hemmed in around the back, and there's more of this idea of rather than carrying a front bunker, you're playing at these back ones that might kind of gobble up the ball. So a few bits of ideas as to how and why we're changing up 13. The main reason was that centerline bunker it didn't fit for me. It didn't make sense with the course. I'm not saying I'm not going to have any. I think I will have some somewhere. But really what this course is about bunkers being dug into the sides of fairways and the angles mattering and camber and things just making it your preferred side of the fairway matter without it being really broken up by one clear hazard. And I might have a centerline bunker somewhere, but if I do, I want it to be quite a big one and not just this tiny little afterthought that one felt like it was. So that's where 13 is. In terms of any other changes, it was originally just dead straight down here. So what we've done as well with those bunkers is brought them in a little bit this side, canted the fairway so it's going out left and then sweeping back right, so that visually it doesn't look as dead straight as it really is. Dug these 2 bunkers in on this side because that's just going to break up this side a little bit more, and we've raised that hill so that it makes sense with the land flowing down here. Then changing the green complex just is something I'm trying to do a bit more. I've got a default style of green I feel like I like on this course. I'll find an example, which would be, actually having said that, I guess it would be something like 6, where you've got this green that is quite longer than it is wide, and it's got a bunker dug into one side, which is encouraging you to play more into one side than another, which is encouraging you to play from a certain side of the fairway or a certain type of shot. Now, knowing that that's what I'm typically doing, or like that's the way that, if we again look at, so 19th hole, not quite the same but similar. I think when you know that that's what your tendency is, or what your brain naturally wants to do, I'm now wanting to pay real attention and go, well, okay, my brain naturally, if I'm doing 3, is going to want to do, I don't know, green, something like this, something like that, and let's have a hazard here. Well, the moment you find yourself doing something as like a reflex, let's try to move away from it. So the last 2 greens that I've built, we've built 12 is a great example of exactly what I've been trying to do. That's the default style green, so canted on one angle to accent your preferred side of the fairway, bunker in short to highlight the danger, bunkers in long again to make, and if you're approaching from this angle, that's going to be really difficult to hold the green. So on a par 5, I'm quite happy to do that because I know that a par 5 is going to be a real scoring hole, so I'm happy to protect the green the best way I can. But when I then think through to the next couple of greens, well, I want this one to be different. I want 14 to be a little bit different. You can bounce the ball in from shorter, and it's flowing front to back, and there's a little bit more interest there. I want 15 to be, okay, quirky, but different in that it's lengthwise, and yes, you've still got that bunker dug in, but actually it's the narrowness that's going to make that play differently. And then 16 was one I really reworked to try to make it again slightly different. It's wider than it is long. It flows front to back. It's about as wide as it is long. That sort of thing. And then when I go into 17, we'll be trying to think, do we want to do the same thing again? And 18 I've kind of planned out. It's going to have a bunker complex nestling into the hillside, so that'll be a little different again. So it's all of those things that when you catch yourself doing one thing and you spot that, okay, I feel like I've done that before, that's when you really scrutinise and go, well, what other ways are there that maybe aren't the first idea? So 2, you can see, is going to be that same sort of thing, so bunkers eating into one side of the green. But again, par 5, I don't really mind that, but I'll think which, I guess then, when you do have that tendency, it doesn't mean it's a bad one. It's just that you want to think really carefully about where you're using it and which holes absolutely need it and which holes you can get away with doing something a little bit different. And it's that sort of thing I think really lends variety and makes the best holes and courses stand out. It's when people have been aware of things they're typically doing and are varying. About half an hour later, and we've sculpted these bunkers, pretty happy with how they're looking, and I made a decision that I'm going to take out these 2 bunkers up the fairway. I think actually a tree makes more sense. It allows me to not wind the fairway quite so widely around them, meaning it's slightly less curvy. I just think it looks like a little bit more of a natural golf hole as is. I don't think we necessarily needed the 2 bunkers there. They weren't ever in play, purely for framing. And it means that I can, I guess, just tighten the hole up a little bit. I like the idea that it's maybe tree lined all the way along here. So that the tree line kind of guides your eye as to where you're going towards that hole. But we're going to see how 15 plays out and how that's planted as well. And it could be now that this entire area becomes one giant grove of trees. We've got a couple of those, but not. That might be one of the thickest parts of the plot. But yeah, not much of a change. But again, I think as it goes, you want to just keep questioning those decisions. Like, do I need those there? Do I need those there? Also, drop this down a little bit. I've made this area so where the camber is, that's a bit more gentle, and then at about this point, about halfway across, so we've extended this camber a little bit further, so about halfway across it now starts really diving down towards here, which is going to leave you that harder second shot. Got to think about the sculpting here, so sightline, if you're playing from down here, are you going to be able to see all of that dip that I want you to? Whereas from up here, I think that'll look pretty nice. So yeah, a few more little changes, nothing major, but you've got to keep editing as you go. We're actually going to look at the Clubhouse, which I've finally gotten around to doing. You might have heard, I've been saying before that I was slightly worried about the memory size. In actual fact, that's not really been too bad. Now, we're talking about contest courses and what do those need to have to really stand out, and the answer is kind of everything. So, the Clubhouse can't, for me, just be one of those, well, here you go. I mean, it obviously can be. It'll be absolutely fine. It's not going to be something people knock. But we've gotten into a trend recently of, you know what, as nice as this one is, we've all seen that before. So you're trying to do something different as much as you can, and make things stand out. Unfortunately, in this game, you've got all sorts of new buildings. There's not maybe as much as we'd have hoped. We'd have liked for a few other clubhouses and things, but you can piece them together and make some interesting things. So I had a particular look I wanted to get. There's this kind of classic sandbelt style clubhouse, which is white stone and red roof, and we wanted to get something going on there. So what I've done is spent probably a couple of hours piecing this together, and mainly it's made from this building. So there's a little ticket building that looks like this, and you can see I've kind of incorporated 4 of them, I think, together in slightly different ways, and every time it's just been building on one shape or something that you get, and then just putting all the bits around it. So we're going to look at what it is and partly why do this. And it's not perfect. There's things that I wished you could do a little bit differently, but the limitations, which I'll show you now, kind of make this about as good as I think I can do. So firstly, if you're wanting to overlap them, you're trying to basically link up the roofs. Now, some genius decided to make it so that these don't perfectly work together. One is at a slightly different angle to another. So you're doing lots of little raises and lowers, and you can see that you're going to get slightly awkward bits in terms of where they do link, where they don't link, etc. and on one side. So it's really painstaking in terms of getting it to all look about right. It's kind of part of the fun. Like I say, I really have to be in a frame of mind to want to do this. But we've ended up with something that looks sort of like this. Now I wanted to have, it's going to be in play on 18, not in play, but as in in view on 18, you're going to see it coming back. It'll be in view big time on 9, and actually I've moved the 9th green. It was down here. I've decided I'll move the tee up a little bit and move the green round to here so that you get that feeling of finishing. This area here is far too good to waste on a practice green. You can get great views back down 1 as you're putting, and it just felt a waste to have it here. So we're going to move that. You're not really going to get many views on it on the front 9. You'll see it on the first when you're looking back, but that's kind of about it. Second tee, you're not going to see it at all, and that'll be the end of it, really. You might see it a little bit actually putting on 4, which is quite cool. And maybe even on 7 you'll get a little glimpse. And that's actually, this is one of those unintended consequences. You might remember we were trying our best to get that sightline from the first hole all the way through to as many other holes as possible. Well, the same's going to work in reverse. The more we work that sightline, the more we work the sightline backwards. And yeah, hadn't really thought of that, but that's quite cool. Where I did want it to come in a little bit more was on the back 9, and just I like the idea that you can see the clubhouse a couple of times before you get back there, so that you've got this anchor in your round a little bit. So on 13 we'll try to create that little view over 14th tee and these 2 fairways as well, 17 and 18. 14 on the green, you're going to get a big view of the clubhouse there. You then play 15, and actually going back off 15 green, you'll get a glimpse of that through the trees as well. Then 16, nothing on the tee shot, but on the approach you can catch little close. You can see it's getting closer as you get towards there. You know you're nearly there. 17 you get nothing of it, and then 18 you're coming down, you'll see it slightly off the tee shot, but mostly when you're putting on the green you'll see where you are. So in terms of this one and how it's been made, what are the extras that we've got? Well, I found it really kind of came to life when I started putting the black bits around it. You can do this with just cart path surface, but actually splines are really tough to get perfectly angular. Could do this, that would work. I just don't find it works as well. So in actual fact, what these are city buildings. So you lower them down, and the very, very top of that, if you lower it to just the right height, will do something along those lines. Now, if you lower, you've then got these two, and the eagle-eyed of you will notice that these are in fact swimming pools that are placed at a tiny little bit above, so that just the white bit comes up, which gives you a nice little pattern. So there's a second one back there as well. Again, little things. Tiny little bits of fence work around here. Oh, I need to put one last little bit of fence on there as well, actually. And that's just to give a little bit more of a border. I really liked just going with the same simple colours. Black and white is really classy and modern, and then that kind of terracotta roof. Now, things I wish you could do, I wish you could get rid of these little ceiling, these little metal posts that come out of the ceilings, but what can you do? In order to mask some of the bits where, as you can see, the roof itself is quite jagged, and you can see all the objects that are in here. Like, it's basically trying to minimize the amount of bits like this, where it just doesn't look like it pieces together so well. So that's been hidden with a few bridges across here. There's also been, where were we? There's a type of shed here, so I'll grab that so you can see. That's actually just for this front bit, because I quite liked the way it made a couple of little archways for a major entrance in here. Worked out quite nicely. Then one of the other things I've used a lot for this kind of white stone, the bottom of this clubhouse would actually be, where are we looking? It's that kind of nondescript grey colour, which is okay, but it's not really standing out. I liked this white that you get from one of these. So sort of shed with all of this fertiliser and stuff. When you lowered that down and sunk it, it got quite a nice wall. It's actually very hard to find decent walls in this game which aren't the standard brick one, so you have to get a little bit creative, and then it limits how you're having to do it. So things like this line here is because when you open it you can see the 5 little bits pointing inwards, so you have to manage those. What else was there on here? Yeah, the slightly diagonal roof is based on the clubhouse I originally took inspiration from for this was the clubhouse at Huntingdale, which is a sandbelt course, and it has this really modern style architecture which I didn't quite replicate, but I wanted to have a nod to it, with this kind of diagonal overhang, which adds a bit of interest to the building, something slightly different. More of these, a couple more pools here, again just to give that pattern and break it up a little bit more. What else do we have? Yeah, the building got very funky here, so I think I've got a shed underneath it as well, because it couldn't quite reach to the ground because I was trying to get this one up here. There's all sorts of messy bits. There's another clubhouse in here, I think. Yeah, try to find it. Oh yeah, here we are. So we've got one of these, which is purely for the chimney. Everything else is buried. A couple more city buildings are in there as well, in order to generate different colours and this base as well. And then if you come around the front, I want to do the main entrance. I liked the idea of having this sort of diagonal staircase coming in. So in order to do that, we've got the same thing as we've used before. So this shed thing, sunken way down to do the steps. So each one of those is that shed sunken down a little bit more. And then in order to create the diagonal thing, the steps are actually all the same width. You're just cutting them off a little bit more by another shed going across it, creating that line, and then filling that in with another city building, which I think is that one. So yeah, I've got these ones which are coming up, and that's creating that black bit on the edge. Oh yeah, I always like creating little viewing decks somewhere on pretty much every one of my clubhouses. So I did one here. You've got, in terms of making that work, you've got a bridge which is creating that extra. In actual fact, that's had to be rotated down and a slight angle so that you hide the other side of the bridge, which is through here. There's then some Yeah, it's quite hard to tell. Here, we just had it, the thing vertically standing up. There's these canvas walls that you can get, the black ones, which are pretending basically to be windows. Another 4 of those sheds on the top. I wish that those meshed with the roof a little bit better, but what can you do? And so that's our clubhouse. You can now see how it's come out. There's been no further changes. How that eventually that 9th green interacts with it, as well as 18. And that gives you a bit of an insight into the sorts of things you look at whilst you're building them. So I hope that this has helped. I'm not sure there have been that many tutorials on clubhouses, and this is by no means the only way to do it, nor is any of this really matter, but it's something I kind of enjoy doing when you get into the right mood, and it can, I think, really lift a course. I think for me the key is always having a look you're trying to imitate, finding the base building that fits with that, and then really it's just freestyling and working off that, being creative and having it all kind of come together. There'll be some things that work, some things that don't, but really it's about problem solving. So as ever, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed the episode. See you next time.